Hello and welcome to Manibil. I was listening through a few videos recently, or it was yesterday evening, and for some reason I came across a an interview with Andrew Tate, which is a person that is very much in the mainstream sphere at the moment, and accused of various shit down in Romania, or what they call Romania. I'm not too much into that case. I'm more interested in. I am personally. I find Andrew Tate to be a an interesting person, but at the same time, someone who thinks he is fantastic because he is economically successful, right? I am not going into these court cases or imprisonment and all that. I'm not saying anything about that. I have no opinion about that because I don't know any shit about that, right? And I would say neither do those who comment on it. Either they are for or against, right? And this is sort of the modern polarized way of dealing with issues. You're either for or you're against, right? And I think this idea of you're either for or against has been sewed into the matrix, so to say, from 9/11 and onwards, right? When George Bush says, if you're not with us, you're against us, right? It's complete polarization. And this is sort of an echo of this kind of thinking that is an attempt at reestablishing the problems that were following from the Second World War, which is the polarization called the Cold War, right? You're either with us or you're a communist, or you're either communist or you're a capitalist. And this black and white thinking, which is prevalent since maybe going all the way back to the First World War, and even back to the Concert of Vienna, the Napoleonic Wars, and so on, right? It's an interesting avenue to follow down the road, right, in history, and try to get a picture of what has led to the situation that you find yourself in now, right? Okay. I have been following Andrew Tate sort of with my left eye, but because I find it to be he's an interesting character, and even more interestingly, it's interesting to understand how people react to a person like Andrew Tate. Basically, he's just using words, right? I don't know about the case and what he's doing in his companies, all this, the physical stuff that goes on before or behind the curtain, right? What he's being judged by in media is what he says. And I will always be, of course, a free speech absolutist, right? Everybody should always be allowed to say whatever they want, but you should be allowed to say, no, I don't want to listen, right? Just because you don't like what somebody says doesn't mean that you all if I could express myself, all of a sudden have a right to shut them down, right? And this is sort of what governments are always looking for, is how do I get around free speech, right? Because you have to shut people down in order to create this sort of dictatorship that seems to be closing in on us, right? By you finding some kind of key, some kind of you sort of find it's hate speech, or you're against those who use their genitals this way, or something like that. And then you can say, okay, now we have to shut these people up over here. It's okay because they're saying something that these people over here don't like. So they find some way to, right? It seems like it's almost like, it seems to me like a, what's it called? A declaration, that a political declaration, like the Declaration of Independence, or whatever, is always used by those in power to pinpoint what they need to manipulate and destroy, right? It seems like, yeah, Declaration of Independence. Well, then they say, okay, then the independence is what I'm going to manipulate and destroy, right? It's almost like we want this not to be touched, and then the politician do everything they can to destroy that which you're telling them not to destroy, under the guise of they are supposedly there to protect you, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, but enough of that. Back to Mr. Tate. I'm reminded, and I'm listening into a recent interview with Tucker on Twitter, and Andrew Tate was interviewed on Twitter by Tucker. Tucker, one guy who has been removed from the mainstream because he's too much free thinking, right? Because that power that shouldn't be, of course, is interested in removing any free thinking individual criticism or saying no to shit, right? You have to obey. Andrew Tate said way back in May 30th, 2023, life hack. Life with men you're in competition with. No. Life hack. Live with men you are in competition with, and you will become a predator. I don't like the sound of predator, right? That sounds like somebody who's eating somebody else. Eating innocent, whatever, right? And his Twitter handle is Cobra Tate. Cobra is a sort of a sneaky snake kind of thing, right? Okay. Get a 4-bedroom house. Move in with an athlete, a millionaire businessman, a philosopher, right? And that's where the third one is where my sort of attention gets caught, right? Take room 4, get some self-respect and hold your own. Get some. What do I get? Some? Do I order room service? Room service? Can I have some self-respect? Yes, I need it now. Yes, please give me some self-respect. Hold your own. What do you mean? Hold your own against those other 4, bedrooms. Hold your own against these other 3 ones, or what? It's not. It doesn't sound particularly intelligent. What he says here, right? I'm not saying he's not an intelligent guy, but it sounds like he hasn't met a philosopher, right? But it sounds like he's appealing to philosophy, and philosophy is for smart people, right? Sort of quote. And by appealing to, you should have your own philosopher, basically, he's saying he's sort of smart and respects philosophy and thinking, and therefore you should think that he's smart, right? So it's kind of sophist in a way, you could say, right? Formulating it this way. But again, I'm a philosopher. I consider myself a philosopher. At least I'm presenting my philosophy. I should think that everybody should philosophize, and they shouldn't necessarily present their philosophy, but I would appreciate it, right? The more people who are doing their own philosophy and presenting it, the more likely it is that other people are going to be inspired by it, right? Now, that doesn't mean just because you're presenting philosophy that you're a good philosopher. It doesn't follow, right? That would be bad philosophy. So I've I'm comparing this tweet here with the interview. I'm jumping into it here, right? And sort of around this half an hour mark, there's some interesting stuff he says here, right, that I'm going to comment on.
1, I would never kill myself. And 2, I think that as a man, there's always going to be a degree of pain and suffering in your journey. I don't think you're ever going to become a successful man or be good at being a man without pain and suffering. And
well, what is the difference then between women and men then? he's not talking about women, so I can't say that he doesn't think that women won't suffer either. But what is it? Is it because you have to suffer as a man in order to make sure that women don't suffer? That might sort of be underlying the thinking here, or you might draw that inner conclusion about what he says, right? Why should I suffer for somebody else that I don't know and don't care about, right? And what is suffering in this sense? Because this is sort of the problem that a lot of people don't seem to realize. That everything you do comes with a cost. But it also usually comes with a benefit, right? But the benefit is subjective in the sense that you are the one deciding the benefit, right? If I went and bought a garden dwarf for $1,000, I would feel that I had just lost $1,000. I hadn't gained anything. But somebody who's crazy about garden dwarfs would say, this is a cheap garden dwarf. I got this one for $2,000 and it sells for $1,500 down in Spain or whatever, right? So to them it's a benefit, or a good cost benefit analysis. But to me it's a bad cost benefit analysis, because I don't want a fucking garden dwarf, right? Everything comes with a cost and a benefit. At least everything comes with a cost. And you have to figure out whether or not there's a benefit to it that is worth the cost. Whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze, right? And that's why you need to be self-sufficient, because you have to judge whether what you're doing is self-sufficient or if it is a good cost benefit. That's why there shouldn't be anybody telling you what to do, because you can rest assured that it's a bad cost benefit analysis, right? And if not for you, then for somebody else who is forced to pay for something they don't want to pay for, right? That's why you can't have a government shoving people around and telling them what to do, because they are just taking the benefits and then giving you what they think you should have, or maybe not giving you anything, just giving you shit, right? I don't want to pay for nuclear arms. I don't want to pay for abortions. I don't want to, you can keep going, right? I don't want to pay for, people's educational needs, or safe cushion their houses, or subsidize whatever, right? Why the hell would I pay for that? I have no fucking benefit from that. So, well, my point is, everything comes at a cost, right? Every benefit, maybe I should say, comes with a cost. And it's up to you to decide whether or not that cost is worth, or that benefit is worth what it costs, right? And that's completely subjective. Nobody can tell you how you should value things, value events, value objects, value whatever it is that you put some cost into acquiring, right?
There's many times in my life where something terrible happened to me, and at the time, if I could change it, I would have. But retrospectively, you kind of look back and go, you know what, that was formative.
Okay, so then he goes into you look back. He doesn't say I look back, right? He wants to push it into something that is a general thing, that is everybody, right? He's just generalized his own subjective emotions, right? His own thoughts and feelings and whatever. He's just pushed it out to a generalization that everybody feels this way, right? So he doesn't want to take a responsibility that this is what I think. This is how I feel, right? He wants to push it out, and that is sort of half feminine in his approach, right? Because he wants to say, I'm a man and I stand for my own, but now he just pushes his, you feel and you do this, right? That's sort of a weak position, I would say. If you are this strong, independent, empowered man, why are you saying you feel rather than saying I feel, right? Take full responsibility of what you're thinking and feeling.
Right. Relative for me. That's right. That is what God decided I needed to become who I became.
Okay, so now we're going into superstition, right? Mysticism. That mysticism is a way of saying, I can't figure this shit out, right? I have to have a sky daddy who takes care of me. That's a sign of weakness, in my opinion, right? That's somebody who, and it might be something that goes all the way back to childhood and what has been inflicted on him as a child, and expecting somebody to be an overlord of some kind. And it's usually parents, but I can't tell, right? I can't say. And when it's parents, you can rest assured that the mother is involved in that, right? And I would hazard a guess that at some times he has been considering himself a protector of women, or a protector of mothers, or he's very concerned about motherhood, or this ideal of women. The Madonna woman, right, has to be protected. And they can only be protected by him suffering. I would hazard a guess that he would have said that at some time, or at least appeal to that, right? Which is sort of, men are expendable and have to go to war and have to let women take the rowboat when Titanic is going down. Women and children first. Men have to suffer. Men have to die, right? Now, that approach has to go away, right? If you, I am actually pro equality, but I'm actually pro real equality. Nobody has to do anything that they don't agree to. All right? That's equality. Don't tell me because I have a dick, or because I have certain kind of muscles, or my body is built in a certain way, or my voice is not high but low because my voice is like this, that is considered a man by most people, that I have to do certain things. Fuck off, man, right? This old school macho bullshit, you can stuff it where the sun don't shine, right? I don't buy it, because this is exactly why we have all the problems now. It's because men thought that they were sort of have to be sacrificing themselves for women, right? And look how far we have been shit tested into oblivion, right?
So all of the pain and all the suffering I've ever gone through in my life ended up, in the end, building me into the person I am, and I'm proud of who I am. So if God decides...
So that's a way of saying, now he's not talking about you anymore. Now he's only talking about him, and he has to come up with some kind of justification for why it is good to suffer, because it has made him who he is, and he thinks by himself that he's great, right? Doesn't sound like, it's not convincing to me, right? It sounds almost like coping, almost, right? So, I mean, I'm not impressed. So it's sort of, you can justify yourself by, I just have to suffer, then I will become a man. I don't think that works, right? I think it works doing philosophy and coming up with some principles, but you can't read your way to principles. You can't go and read in a book somewhere, or you know, maybe a philosopher can help you think for yourself, but if the philosopher says, I have these conclusions, and you should adopt these conclusions that I have because I'm so smart, I have sit in my philosophy cloud castles and come up with some conclusions, and then you're just a priest, handing people 12 rules for life or whatever, just like Jordan Peterson, in this fetish of, here are the commandments you have to follow so that you don't actually have to do philosophy, right? Why is he saying in this one, move in with an athlete, a millionaire businessman, and a philosopher? Is that because you are not an athlete, and you are not a millionaire businessman, and you're not a philosopher? Well, how do you know that you need these things if you haven't philosophized? If you need a philosopher, I don't need to move in with a philosopher, right? I can think for myself. I can philosophize by myself. Thank you very much. So why would I move in with a philosopher if I can do it myself? No. So he's basically saying he can't philosophize. Or maybe he's saying you should do it, right? Implying that he has done it himself. Otherwise, why would he tell other people to do it if he wouldn't do it himself, right? So if he has done it himself, it means he has hired a philosopher to tell him about philosophy. That means he hasn't done enough philosophy in order to do it for himself. So how has he philosophized his way to the point where he needs a philosopher? Isn't that a circular argument?
Besides, I need to go back to a Romanian dungeon for however many days. Then all I can do is accept it and accept his plan and accept that it's going to make me a better person. And
So
deal with
you
it.
see the hand of God in your life?
Absolutely. I think that
Okay, this is interesting, right? Now he's sort of pushing away because he cannot say that government is immoral, right? Because he doesn't have the particular philosophical cojones to go all that way. He hasn't created any moral principles that would point in that direction. So he has to shroud it all in religion, shroud it all in mysticism, that there is some sky daddy who is testing him and putting him through the ringer or whatever, right? So he's creating a story about why he is suffering, right? And at the same time, he seems to say that you need suffering in order to become a man. So why is he creating a story about why he's suffering? If suffering, I mean, he's putting himself through it, right? Or is he not being himself? Is there some God acting through him or some whatever, right? Which is this old mysticism that basically, in my opinion, rests on not being able to think for yourself and wanting to be 100% your own agency. You want to give agency to something outside yourself so that you don't have to take responsibility and maybe realize that there is not really any purpose that you can point to in your experience, right? And this hunt for purpose is complete futile, in my opinion, right? I mean, purpose in the sense of the meaning of life and all this kind of abstract thinking, right? Or, you know, it's just, in my opinion, it's just a reflection of people's psychology, right? That it's sort of a kind of midlife crisis kind of thinking, right? That why I've been alive for half of my life now. If I'm 40, I'm going on 80. Well, okay, half of my life has been lived. Now I have the other half left. What have I done so far? What's the meaning of that? And where am I going? Am I going to die? Yes, I'm possibly going to die. And can I take anything with me? What have I learned? What have I done? You know, am I going to be remembered? It's this kind of, and then falling into no. I better come up with some story to cushion my pathetic little non-existing spine, right? To make me feel good about myself and my choices. Right? At the same time, as you don't want to take responsibility for them, saying there's some sky ghost doing it through me, testing me or whatever, right? Bullshit.
he's the best of planners. And like I said, if you retrospectively analyze all the times in life you wish you could have changed things,
Yes.
he knew better. And I'm going to have to accept that.
When did you conclude that?
I guess I always kind of knew. I was atheistic for a while when I was younger. But as you get older, you start to look at the world.
Atheistic. Atheism is in an interesting term, which is a term conjured up by Christians, right? Or, religious people. Those who are not following our edict, our Christianness, they are atheists. So you're labeling those who are sort of innocent and say, well, I didn't come up with this weird religion. Don't label me as something just because you came up with some shit I don't understand, right? So it's a way of demonizing those who are not following the cult, right? This is the oldest trick in the book, right?
And understand that the thing for me was actually, I guess, a scientific principle. It was Newton's law of equal and opposite force. If there is evil in the world, and I'd like to think we both agree there certainly is,
Yes.
there has to be an equal and opposite force, which is good. And I would like to think of that as God.
Okay, so he's just, this is mysticism, right? This is plain old stupid mysticism, combining, the physical world, Newtonian physics, with good and evil, right? It's a very, very old and fallacious way of thinking. And it's also imbued with mysticism because you're bringing in the sky ghost, right? But what you're also doing, saying, is implying that there's a connection with how things work in the physical realm, so to say, and an appeal to good and bad. And he's placing himself on the good side because saying, I am the one who's been inflicting with the sky ghost. And he's the good one. And therefore I'm good because I said he's good, right? That's what mystics do, right? Because they are not apparently smart enough to come up with a moral principle, right? So they have to shroud themselves in goodness by saying that mysticism is good. I'm inflicted by that mysticism, therefore I'm good. I mean, it's like, give me a fucking break, man, right? I mean, only stupid people are going to fall for this trick.
Even the idea of God as a notion.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to go into, but I'll rewind a bit here. Let's see. Yes, I was also going to mention, David Hume, right? Whenever, let's say, well, actually, always, whenever people are arguing for morality, just check whether they are or not they are violating Hume's Izzard problem, right, or Izzard gap. It's so brilliant, the point that Hume made, right? It has become known as the Izzard problem, and it has been paraphrased as you can't get an ought from an is. That's an incorrect interpretation of what Hume said. But Hume said you cannot just say, you cannot argue for a God or the existence of this or existence for that, therefore goodness or badness, right? Ought or ought not. That's what Andrew Tate does, of course, right? He's basically violating Hume's Izzard gap. And it's what everybody does. Everybody who is not aware of how you can actually argue for this, that, and the other. They do this crazy shit. They don't care about philosophy. They care about shrouding themselves in goodness so they can feel good about themselves, right?
Which is good. And I would like to think of that as God. Even the idea of God as a notion, even just as...
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's a notion. It's an idea. It's a creation. It's an abstraction. So that's what mysticism is, when you create some abstraction and then push that abstraction into that experience, right? You put a ghost into the machine, so to say, right? You create the ghost that is taking care of the machine in order to feel good about yourself. And then you go and say, okay, and that ghost I just created is the good one, right? And if there's somebody fighting that ghost, they're the evil ones. They're the atheists, right? This kind of mysticism is, I mean, we're living in 2023, right? This might as well have been the 15 or 1400s, right? 1300s. What he's saying here, he's a medieval mystic, right? There's no difference in what he's saying and what they were saying back in the 1300s, right?
As a concept, if that idea of God resists evil, then God is real. If you have two islands...
Oh, then God is real. Also, this is the most stupid. Do I have to argue this, right? I mean, this is mysticism, right? This is somebody who wants to live in a conjure up idea about how things work. It's not in, I'm not saying that everything is just science, right? Well, that doesn't mean you can just create what the fuck you want and put it into science, right? Put it into reality and say, oh, there's a God that is, diffused into everything that moves and it's goodness and the only badness over there. And all those people I don't like, they're the bad people and I'm in the good camp and so on, right? It's all mystic. There is no philosophy here, right? No philosophy at all. So I'm not sure why the hell he appeals to philosophy. Is it just sophistry, right? Is it just sophistry? Is he just saying, well, hey, I guess I need to say philosopher, but then I sound like I can reason and I understand the shit, right?
You have two people, let's say a ship crashes, and you have two people who swim to two different islands. On one island, they're atheists, savages, and they rip you apart. And the other island, you get there and they believe in God and they believe they're not allowed to kill you. Even just
So he creates a false dichotomy, right? So he's saying the Christians are the good people because they have a rule that says you cannot kill, right? Now, have they violated that rule all through the centuries? Of course they have, right? So don't give me any bullshit about the virtues of Christian people, right? Or religious people. They're the most savage, brutal, fucked up people that there are and have been through the ages, right? But it's creating the false dichotomy, right? That if you're an atheist, apparently you're allowed to kill people, right? Because if you don't have this magical book called the Bible that says you should not kill, right? Therefore, by some magic, these people are, it's going to be all rainbows and fluffy teddy bears, right? And over there, because they don't have this magic book, they're going to kill each other because the best thing you can do is kill your customer, right? No, people are dependent on each other. That's why they're not going to kill each other, right? Because you can't build that house alone, right? You need the carpenter, you need the plumber, you need the bricklayer, you need the architect. So you're not going to kill those who you need to help you get where you want to go, right? Now, those who have the religion, they are screwing and fucking around with the minds of their children in order to become subservient to some sky daddy, right? Who is apparently channeling himself through a priest that has to tell you that you do this, you do that, you pay this, you do that, you do as you're told, right? Is that how it works? No. I think a free market where you're not forcing children to believe certain things that is based on some mystical shit in a book written by some sandal people 2,000 years ago who has smoked some weird mushrooms or something, right? Or eat some food that are gone bad and written some stupid shit in some parchments, right? That has been censored and translated and retranslated and reformulated, gazillion times through history, right? But of course, you're creating this scare scenario. If you don't have this book, you're going to kill your customers over there on that island, right? Bullshit, man.
it's their idea of God. God saved your life. So I think even just the concept of God in and of itself, if enough people believe it makes them do good, then God must be true. And that's the equal and opposite force to the evil of the world.
God must be true. Well, okay, so it's like this term that is called true, right? True is a very, very, very important term. It's used both by mystics and by philosophers, right? And maybe that's up to a sort of kind of weakness in vocabulary and language in general, that there is no particular language for religion and there is no particular language for philosophy. It's all the same language we're using both in everyday and in these particular mental endeavors, right? So, what does it mean that X is true, right? That's a philosophical question. That might even be a metaphysical or epistemological question, as they call it, right? It's either what is the underlying story, how do you get to an idea of existence, for instance, right? And what does it mean that something is true? And is that a kind of knowledge, and so on, right? These kinds of aspects has to be outlined in rigid philosophy, in my opinion. You cannot just say God and then you have solved the problem, right? It's an idea. Okay, you have an idea, and then you infuse that idea in the world, and then it works against the evil that you are fighting, and you're on the mystic bullshit, right? It's the easy way to create and cushion your own life, right? Without doing the necessary rigid underlying philosophy you need to go through, and you can't cherry pick in philosophy. You have to go where the conclusions lead you, right? You can't just and that's what mystics do. They cherry pick a story that fits their bill, so they are on the good side, or always, right? Violating all the Hume's, this sort, all the way, right?
And this is how I view it. So I don't see how anybody with a conscience cannot believe in God anymore.
Okay, so now he's on the good side. Now he can point fingers, right? Now he can point fingers. Yeah, you're not believing in God. I just created, I had an idea, and I fused everything with it, so now you're part of it. I have controlled you, right? I'm a mystic philosopher, and I have told you, I am not aware of what this Tate. If I didn't read this interview, I wouldn't know that I was on the evil side of things, right? But apparently I am then, right? I'm not following this Sky Daddy, right? I'm thinking for myself. I don't need some Sky Daddy to protect me, right? So this mysticism is never going to fly, right? You might have success for a while where you lure people into this this unfounded mystic kind of philosophy, but it's going to unravel and just, it's going to unfold in a way that people are going to find there's nothing there. There's nothing there. He's just a well-spoken businessman who has made a business out of doing this shit. I would say he's basically doing this for the attention. That would be my sort of... I have a principle I call the worst case principle, right? If I don't have an access to people's intentions, right? Which I obviously don't have because of what is known as the problem of other minds. An intention is something that is in the mind, and I have my intentions, right? But I can only access my own intentions. I can't access somebody else's intentions. That's why people are so hung up on judging people by their actions. That's in order to have an idea of what their intentions might be, right? And that's why priests and sophists and so, they're very concerned about controlling the narrative of how to understand actions. So they can cover up their shitty actions as being good while they're actually evil, right? Or, manipulative and parasitic, right? It's all narrative to make you think a certain way. So you can cover up either your own or those you want to align yourself with, cover their bad intentions, right? So therefore you have to have a principle to judge people's intentions. And what would be more smart or more reasonable than saying, well, what could possibly be the worst intention? Maybe he's just an attention whore, right? He wants attention because there's money in it, right? And he's sort of selling the idea of the macho man, right? And he can, reform these PlayStation playing, white zombies sitting at home thinking that they can, extract some machismo from Andrew Tate through the internet or something like that, and they will send him money or whatever, right? It's all a business model, right? I mean, I've been an entrepreneur, right? I know how these things work, man, right?
That's such a profoundly different worldview from the one that we're presented with, I think.
Profound is a bullshit word that people who don't really want to do good philosophy, they use in order to tell themselves they're smart, right? Profound is bullshit bingo. So just like, the rich experience, right? This is a profound thinking, right? Oh, there's something magic about that profound. It's like it's good and it's smart and it's all sorts of things. If you can just say the word profound, you will be accepted. You will raise a couple of levels in your philosophy thinking, right?
Do you think that's maybe the division?
And it's also, there's so many people in media and art and all over everywhere, right? Who are so full of shit. They're so full of themselves, right? And all these stupid people out there that push them because they have an agenda. But then they have to shroud themselves in smartness, right? And say words like profound and so on. That is just an empty term that doesn't entail anything, right? Other than it indicates to me that you might not be that smart and profound after all, right?
In the West, between people who see those forces at work and those who don't?
I think the West is actually split between people who think and people who don't think at all. I think the people there's no such thing as these two opposing worldviews. I think people believe there's worldview A and worldview B. I disagree with that. I think there's worldview A, the good guys, which are primarily people who do believe in God, do have parameters, do believe in standards, do believe in self-respect, do know how to say no. And there's worldview B, which changes day by day, based on what they're told, which means they have no real worldview at all. They just repeat.
This is sort of, it's again this, you have to create a black and white world. I think that, let me cut this out pretty clear, right? Where I'm thinking around these parts. If you have to create a black and white world where the good people are in this camp and all the bad people are in the other camp, and then you put yourself into this good people partition, right? The camp of the good people, that's where you are, right? That's how you manipulate people into thinking that you're a good person without actually arguing for it, right? Without have to arguing how you approach any given situation and any potential action in that situation performed by you, right? How do you go about doing that? Well, you need a principle, right? That is applicable at any place and any time. This can't be a principle, right? Yeah, I've read the book. I'm in the good camp. So I can't be blamed for anything because I'm good no matter what I do. There's not on Tuesday I'm doing something that could possibly be labeled as bad. No, because I'm in the good camp, right? This is one of the oldest tricks in the book. I mean, this is basically how most people I've heard argue for morality and ethics and good and evil and so on. They are always creating a situation where they are in the good camp, right? That's the whole purpose of it. It's not to do philosophy. It's not to come up with a moral principle that says, if you're in a situation, apply this principle, right? I've read the book. I mean, give me a fucking break, man. Are we really going 2,000 years back, right? Are we going back to the Middle Ages, right? You have to be on your horse and saddle and, the red cross and the white background. Go kill the infidels and, oh, man.
And they have no standards and they have no parameters. There's nothing you can tell them that will make them wake up and go, that's wrong, because they have no inherent morality. So you can literally...
Oh, inherent morality. What the hell is that? Inherent? So there's a morality built into you just because you read a book that some crazy people have been writing and translating through centuries? Then all of a sudden you are inherent. There's some morality inherent in you. It's running through your veins or something like that. Oh my God. As I say, okay, listen carefully, right? I shall say this only once. The world is run either by psychopaths, crazy people, or useful idiots, right? And all. It's run by psychopaths, crazy people, and useful idiots. And it's only a matter of which one are we dealing with in this case, right? Is this a psychopath? I don't think so, right? Is he a crazy person? Well, he's not a useful idiot, right? Useful idiots don't, are not loudmouths that end up in prison usually, right? So I'm converging towards crazy person, right? There's some unhinged thing about him that, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how to put it, but it's like this sort of quick fix, mysticism, philosophy, whatever. Yeah, suffering. Oh, I'm great. I'm macho. All men have to do that. I'm in the good camp. I've solved it. That is a crazy person, right? Psychopaths wouldn't even try to do that. They would try to manipulate the words and, Barack Obama sitting there, always being sort of smooth, sort of dripping this, word honey into your ears, and make you go to sleep, right? And dream of fluffy teddy bears, right?
You could say bestiality is accepted and encouraged now. It's good for you for climate change. And they'll sit there and go, oh, for climate change, oh, well, off we go. And they'll just do it. So I think you have
But what's the difference between, because Bible, is that better? Because climate change, that's just the new Bible, right? It's another authoritarian, follow the edicts kind of thing, right? It's stupid. I mean, you could say it's slightly more philosophical and maybe slightly more, elaborate, the Bible, but it's still fucking medieval, right? I'm not going to let run my life and my family and my children and my environment by appealing to medieval mysticism, right? Fuck off, man.
a camp of people who think, and you have a camp of people who repeat. And I don't think there's actually the opposing side to the good, I don't think function as a thinking populace at all. I think they simply repeat.
It feels like the conflict between those two groups is getting more intense.
It's certainly getting more intense, and it was interesting for me because, and I want to be an optimist, but I lost so much faith in humanity during COVID. If you would have told me how COVID would have gone down before COVID, I'd say no way. We're not that bad. I thought the people aren't that dumb. But when I experienced COVID,
it's not because people are dumb. It's because what really moves people about is fear, right? Humans are subdued into submission in sort of a kind of Stockholm syndrome relation with their government, right? They are pretending that government is just rainbows and unicorns, right? While they are just threaten you with murder in order to make you do what they want, right? And government, of course, understands that. They have to pretend they are protecting you while they are robbing you blind and controlling you using fear, right? COVID is just the government, ramping up fear for a moment in order to see how much they can control people, right? It didn't take many months for the various psychopaths in the hardcore psychopaths around the world governments to step up and say, you have to fucking obey our orders, right? Around the world, Australia and New Zealand and whatever, Canada, wherever they were, all over the world basically, there were only very few politicians who didn't toe the line, right? And there was some hardcore shit going down that people were basically threatened into, taking these injections, right? And you're not hearing from these particular politicians anymore, right? People are controlled by fear, and every single psychopath in the system understands that, right? And some of the crazy people do also, right? That's just what it is. It's not because people are stupid. It's because people are afraid. All right? What a government does is saying, well, yeah, we have to threaten you into submission. But that's because if we didn't do that, it would be way worse. It would be anarchy. It would be atheism. And people will kill each other on the other island. Oh, that's just what the kind of fear that actually Mr. Tate here just appealed to with the island analogy, which is sort of false dichotomy, right? Shrouded in mysticism. He's a manipulator, right?
COVID, it's actually scary. You see how the Nazis managed to do what they did. You see how they managed to put people in concentration camps. You see it. And I had a very unique view of COVID because in the first days of COVID, when people were falling over in China and the Italian hospitals were overrun, at the height of the panic, when most people believed, because it was the very beginning, early stages. My brother and I had a very logical conversation and said, we're two military-aged men in very good physical condition. If we die of this, the world's over. If it can kill us, it's zombie apocalypse. So why are we going to live in fear? So we found the only two countries that were open, which were Sweden and Belarus. We had just been to Belarus. This is before the Ukraine war. We'd just been there. We decided to try Sweden. So for the first 3 months of COVID, during the height of lockdowns, when Florida was closed, when it was absolute...
I remember.
Yeah, when it was the craziest lockdowns globally, me and Tristan are in Sweden in absolute freedom. They had no restrictions, no masks, no vaccine passports, no social distancing, nightclubs are full, restaurants are open, perfectly complete normal society. Nobody talks about this anymore. Nobody talks about, wait, Sweden never did a thing. Everything functioned perfectly fine the entire time. And they don't have it. Where's their illness of their winter of severe illness and death?
Yes.
They never had one. It's a cold country, never had one. So we were living in Sweden, living completely normal lives, seeing the internet and seeing this insanity. And we're like, well, surely if we just put up a few videos of us partying in Sweden in nightclubs, this will wake people up. People ignored their own eyes. That's the scariest thing about everything, is that they can get to a level where, with the media machine, where people will genuinely ignore their own eyes. I don't understand how you can get people so brain.
Okay, so what are you doing when you're appealing to a God, right? Are you experiencing that God? Or are you ignoring your own eyes, not experiencing, and then you're attaching that God thing to it, right? Because if you can't see it, you shouldn't believe it, right? But you believe a God and you can't see. And if you can see that God, I think you're full of shit, right? So it's sort of over here. No, we can, here, when we're not talking God, we have to see it to believe it, right? But if we're over here in mysticism, just a few minutes later or earlier, then oh yeah, it's see-through reality, and it's there and making it good, and it pushes against evil, and you're like, fuck off, man, right? Mystic.
Brainwashed that they will see that the sky is blue, and then they'll watch that the sky is green, and then they'll look at it again and go, the sky's green. It's crazy to me, but COVID proves they can do that.
Yeah, but it's crazy to me to believe in a God that sees through the reality and pushes against evil, right? And you can place yourself in the good camp. That is even more crazy than believing trust the science, right? I'm not saying trust the science, but at least it's an appeal to something you could possibly experience, right? God is not an appeal to something you can. It's just pure, mysticism, right? Okay, I think I've done enough on this part. I'm got my point across that, that there is. These are very dangerous times, right? I have to, alert you on this. That a world population of individual people where 99% have had their ability to think and decide for themselves, free of any mysticism and indoctrination, is basically non-existent. So they're sort of looking for some savior to come and do shit, right? And tell them how to live their life, right? That's why a guy like Jordan Peterson, writing this ridiculous book, 12 Rules for Life, he's trying to create the new Bible and just adding 2 more points, right? And they're looking up to these kinds of weirdos, right? That should come and save them because they can't think for themselves. Well, my point would be then, well, if you can't think for yourself, how can you think your way to judging whether somebody else should tell you what to think, right? That's bad thinking in itself. And all of these kinds of people will pop up, right? They have been popping up, regularly in social media and media that has these grandiose ideas about how to do shit, right? And what it means to be a woman, and what it means to be a man, and what it means to be a wife, and what it means to be children. That is sort of have this, hey, Everything is like this. Done. I've done it, man. Just do as I say, man. Right? Please share, like, and subscribe. Give me a comment. Please consider a donation. I also want to have a bottle of red wine now and then, right? Otherwise, see you in the next one.